The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Here we go. It's another 30 minutes of talking about beer with me on this show, the Florida Beer Podcast. This is Dave, your host and author. And apart from giving you the worst intro that I ever possibly had, I am going to let you know that we are getting ever so closer to episode 100. I don't know if we're going to do anything special. Probably. We'll see. I don't know. We're currently in the middle of doing all sorts of fun stuff in Tampa, so I don't know if I want to slow that down. Regardless of what I decide to do, I do want you to make sure and to like and subscribe this particular show. So if you're listening to us on a podcast app, hopefully you have gone ahead and subscribe to us. If you haven't, go ahead and do that right now. If your podcast app has some sort of ratings, like if you're on Apple Podcasts or whatever, make sure to give us a nice 5-star rating. Really does help get the word out. If you are not listening to us on a podcasting app, then you're probably either on YouTube, at which time you could subscribe to us, or you're just at good old-fashioned FloridaPodcastNetwork.com and our little subset, FloridaBeerPodcast.com. As for the Florida Podcast Network, make sure that you follow them as well. We are a proud member of that. There's all sorts of great shows that are coming down the pipeline. Some new ones that I'm really excited about. Cannot wait to hear them. I know that we've just released a few new shows like Texploration, which I love. Definitely excited for everything that's coming up. And another brewery that has a lot of exciting things that have happened and a lot of exciting things that are coming up is Big Storm Brewing, based out of Clearwater. They're all up and down the west coast of Florida. You've seen them all over the place. We've had them on the show before. LG, the owner, is a good friend of ours, and we're always excited to bring him on. And we're actually going to be talking about something interesting because they are one of the first breweries in the state of Florida that have installed CO2 scrubbers in the brew house. Most of you listening to this podcast know this, but if you don't, CO2 production is a normal part of fermentation. When all the yeast goes in there, eats up all the sugars, they just release CO2 as a natural byproduct. For the most part, that CO2 is just allowed to dissipate into the atmosphere. Big Storm has installed new equipment that will be capturing that CO2 and repurposing it for their own devices. So I sat down with LG at a very busy Clearwater tap room one evening a few weeks ago and spoke to him about that, spoke to him about their recent openings in Orlando. They're still working on their tap room in Ybor City, downtown in the heart of Centro Ybor, and all sorts of great stuff that is coming to Big Storm as well. Definitely want to crack a beer open for this one because it is an awesome interview. Love having him on the show. I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate you for listening, so enjoy. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, buddy.
You should just be like a monthly, okay, what's going on with Big Storm now?
Whenever you want, whenever you're in town.
Which is unfortunately not as long as much as I want it to be.
Yeah, well, we'll have to come down to you, I guess. Bring something your way.
I know of a few spots. Let's do that. But what I wanted to start with, and you mentioned it, and I know that you're not the first in Florida, if I am correct, but you have a brand new, awesome CO2 scrubbing unit. And I will start off by asking, with the exception of the hose into the bucket of water,
right?
Exactly how much CO2 does a brewery make?
I'm sorry, how much?
How much CO2 does a brewery make? Why do you need that?
Yeah, so, and look, I'm not smart enough to do this myself. This is what Earthly Labs has told us, but it's about 1,500 trees worth, or I guess 1,500 trees absorbance worth, I don't know, of CO2, right? And so we're really excited about what we can do with our beer. But, really the big thing is actually the distillation side, right? So as we get that higher ABV products, recapturing that CO2 and seeing what we can do with it. I use the term loosely, but it's a partnership with Earthly right now, in an academic sense of what happens with a CO2 from distillation wash and how it good or bad for beer, right? Will it still be the same purity and sensory that they expect it to be? So I don't know. Answer the question, 1,500 trees is what I think it is, but that's like saying computing horsepower to something else. I don't know, but
is a lot of this sort of a labor of love? Is this something that it's not so much going to affect the bottom line positively, but it's just something that you do?
Yeah. Look, so we have looked at a lot of renewable technology and none of it. So that's not true. None of it. A lot of it just doesn't make financial sense. I've tried for years to make solar math work and it just doesn't. This is one that does, right? So this is a good business decision and a good neighborly decision. We're going to keep examining other renewable technology, but this was that rare intersection where both made sense, where both worked. And so, it's a couple year payback, right? But I think everything we do here, we try to do no harm, do good. And we're not environmentalists by any means, but when presented with an opportunity to do something that's good and makes good business sense, well, you do it, right? That's easy. I really don't think we should get any credit for that. It was a good decision. We're fortunate to have been able to do it. And I'm excited to grow the capability of capturing more CO2 as our fermentation farm grows.
Awesome. Was it a big, involved process getting them in, getting it understood? How much of that has changed your physical manufacturing side?
So, yeah, I wouldn't say a big process. I mean, look, Earthly did a lot of the work, right? What's interesting is we found through this installation and setup, we found just some functional issues that we would have wished we had improved upon in the tanks when we designed them and picked them, right? And so, we're making those corrections now and just have a better production process and area. But, I think anytime you're forced to look at how you do things, right? So this sense we're using that time frame or that analysis to improve our process moving forward. And the CO2 recapture is part of that, right? But it was how can we better, more proper, ferment beer and wash. And so it was helpful in that regard.
Interesting. Are you seeing, I guess, if you were to open up more locations or if you were to open up additional equipment, is a lot of the stuff that you learned from this process now just going to be a part of the Big Storm playbook? Now, when it comes time to upgrade, now when it comes time to grow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially as we added the tank farm behind us. I mean, there'll be new specs on what we expect on our tanks and, how we want them laid out and designed to be a little different. And then, look, as this technology continues to evolve, it would be really awesome if it gets even smaller and more cost effective to just kind of be a standard piece of equipment for us. I'm not sure if it would make sense to some of our brew pub settings, even like a fat point. I'm not really sure if it would make sense for a fat point, but like everything, right? Technology just gets better and usually the price stays the same. It just gets more efficient. So that's kind of the hope here. And now having used it and using it, I think we'll kind of make it standard for production facilities or facilities, not production facilities of a certain size.
Do you think that this is equipment and this is something that's going to be a part of what breweries do from here on out?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, look, it really, again, you're doing something good, right? And you're taking something that you're going to let dissipate into the air. You need anyways, right? So I think as the technology gets more cost effective, I do think maybe it's not a day one purchase, but it's a day two purchase. Like it really is like, okay, we've stabilized the business. We're paying rent. We're making our payroll. Let's go buy that machine if we can afford it, right? And then the more the machine is used, the less scary it is for anyone financing the equipment, right? So that'd be helpful too, right? So I certainly hope that it's more welcomed and more part of that standard opening package.
Awesome. And obviously, as we're talking about new locations, you have grown quite a bit since we last spoke. We're currently building out Ybor. How is Ybor coming along?
Oh, it's coming along.
Well, I guess let's backtrack a little bit. Why Ybor?
Well, I mean, it's a phenomenal location, right? Right in the heart of 7th and Centro.
Used to be
Ybor
Hamburger Mary's.
Yeah, Hamburger Mary's. Yep, Mary's Pub. I think Ybor City's going through pretty big growth right now, and it's always been a place we've loved. I mean, look, I lived a mile away in downtown Tampa in Channelside, but before I moved to get closer to the business, my next move was Ybor. Like, it's just a eclectic area with so many different cultural influences that when presented the opportunity to go there, we jumped, right? And so frustrating, we haven't made more progress on build. I promise you, it's not for lack of pushing. It's not a small project over there to undertake and get going, but we're really excited to be part of that community. I think the culinary scene and the food and bev scene that's already there, but it's going to continue to grow, is going to be pretty remarkable. So we're just excited to have a spot, right?
I was going to say the vision of what Ybor is, especially at night, is starting to change a little bit. It's starting to, I want to say, clean itself up, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think businesses come and go, right? And consumers demand what they want. And I think places aren't reopening after COVID and new businesses are coming in. And, it's just changing. It's definitely just changing. And the people that have been there this entire time, the Tampa Bay Brewings of the world, right? The Dobles, they deserve a lot of credit for that. I think, we could throw rocks at them. We're right there. And so for us to go to Ybor where we're going certainly wouldn't be possible without them. So it's exciting. I said, we're just really excited to be part of the momentum. Ybor was going one way or forward with or without Big Storm, right? So just to be a part of it's super cool.
And I guess that brings to mind the ultimate question, in that traditionally craft beer growth was to take your present location and make it bigger and make it bigger and make it bigger and make it bigger. Cigar City did something similar. Obviously, Sierra Nevada has sort of a compound going.
Right.
And yet Big Storm and a lot of other breweries here in the state of Florida, instead of taking one location and making it bigger, right, they're starting to create outposts.
Sure.
Three Daughters just opened up another tap room on Clearwater Beach.
Yep.
Descent just opened up a tap room in Lakeland. You have, you've got Ybor, Orlando just opened, so it's going to bring you up to 5, not counting a couple of the other ones. In terms of the business, why would it make more sense to create more outposts rather than have one massive destination?
Yeah, so certainly I think some of that's marketing, right? I mean, the more you, like I always say, it's like Cape Coral, right? I mean, we'll never be as local as Cape Coral Brewing Company was, right? Like we'll never be Cape Coral Brewing Company, but we can still be a part of the community. And so I think that helps a lot with overall sales and on and off premise. But at least in our experience, it's just how following dollars, right? It's been what is the path of least resistance to affording more tables and chairs, right? And so, when you have a landlord that's giving you money to build something out and change a concept with rent as opposed to just all these certain dollars up front. I mean, look, we've doubled or almost tripled our consumption space here, right? We have plans to add a lot more consumption space here, but those things are contingent, right? I still need a place to park cars. I still need a place to do things. And I think the reality is, for most people, it's actually the reason for this is really because of where their original locations have been, right? They're not in the middle of an industrial warehouse with nothing around them anymore, or 100,000 square feet capability, just keep adding on and adding on and adding on. They just ran out of space, right? And so there's certainly an intersection between where it's good for marketing as well and growing your business. But I can at least tell you, in our situation, it has been finding good locations, good communities that we think our product will do well, but also working with almost someone else's dollars to start getting going, right? So,
and how do you make it a part of that community? Because you take a look at the community that's around where Ybor is going to be versus downtown Orlando versus Cape Coral.
Sure.
Those are three very different locations.
Yeah.
How do you make it, I guess, which is more important, having it be a Big Storm style experience to where you walk in and it's like, oh, this is Big Storm, I know what to expect.
Sure.
Versus let's take the obvious flavor of the community and make that a part of it as well.
Listen, so a very, very fine intersection, right? But what I would say is, I mean, we're not Bennigans, right? So I think there's for us, there's a minimum level of acceptable service and quality that is, I hope, where we hit the benchmark. But as it comes to food and beverage choice, like Ybor, we have an idea of what we think we're going to brew there, and I think it'll serve some functional purpose for all of our other tap rooms. But the reality is that the brewers over there, that needs to be its own flair. right? And the food too needs to be so fresh. So we do things a little different in each location, and we kind of feed off of each other in the context of, some of the way food has been prepared and served in Orlando has led to good changes here in Pinellas, right? But, it started with the influence of the culinary experience of Orlando that came through. But, we don't want to be a franchise. We're not BJ's. To the extent that we can standardize things for a business, that's great, right? But everyone's got to have their own little things, do things differently.
And one of the reasons that I find that so interesting is that you've got Fat Point. But Fat Point has stayed Fat Point.
Yeah.
You didn't just rebrand it and say, here's another Big Storm.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to keep that? And I guess it also dovetails into your recent acquisition for the IP of Darwin Brewing. Yeah.
Well, so, Fat Point, I'm not sure if I would structure that deal again the way that I did it, right? I learned a lot. But like right now, our lease is up in our building. We could have just kind of left, right? But we made the decision to buy the building across the street. And, talk about being part of the community, that's a location where just the property and weight all lays out. Like we're going to be able to keep adding on and adding on and adding on. And we're really, really excited about that. But, I think it's like Darwin. The building didn't work for us. The equipment didn't work for us. The price didn't work for us. But we knew the brand worked in the area. And so we're going to bring back a Darwin tap room somewhere. And because you have to, without that soul of the brewery and the community, what do you really have? You don't really have much. But there's a reason we're not brewing Cape Coral beer right now. Like we own the brand to Cape Coral. I've been looking for the right location, then COVID hit, right? We intend on bringing that brand back and being that hyper local brewery offering between beer and food, maybe do things a little bit differently, find a new team. Doesn't necessarily be the Big Storm team, right? But yeah, to be honest with you, I would say maybe I didn't know any better, right? But when we did that, but I really do respect the sense of community and the desire to see their name in the lights that is in Punta Gorda, right? They love Fat Point. And, hopefully this new location will help hit again, that minimum level of acceptable service and experience that we probably aren't hitting right now in the current tap room.
Gotcha. And I was going to say, just moving across the street will be able to get you.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of things that I could do in our current building, but I wasn't willing to make an investment in someone else's building, right? In a short-term lease. So, now that we own the building across the street, we're going to be able to put money into it to do the things that I would have always wanted to do. Starting first and foremost with anyone who goes there, having an air conditioning that works, constantly. Oh yeah. Jesse sent me a text today with, I think right now in the tap room, it's like 78. Like that's not necessarily okay, right? Like it shouldn't be that hot. So we're excited just to move across the street and again, stay a part of the community, right? So
it's kind of amazing. Now, especially since we've got this big, beautiful wall of gin and vodka and all sorts of other good stuff, the Big Storm Distilling is really taking off.
Oh yeah, really, really excited about that. We have some things we need to upgrade here to be able to utilize the continuous still that's on its way. But essentially what used to take us 8 weeks from stripping runs to spirit runs is now going to take us 8 hours. And so, there's a lot of stuff we haven't done at the distiller. We're laying down barrels every day, but we can't put product out in the market because it'd be gone. We only could produce so much. And so the moment that still's installed, we plan on running hard and fast on a lot of things that we just don't have the ability to do now. So very, very excited. We're lucky to have a good team, and we're really going to, I think we're finding our niche a little bit on some of these, these malt whiskeys with a connotation back to the beer, right? So wave maker whiskey, the same mash profile. Once we get out of the kettle, once we get to the kettle, basically skip through, right? Cool down, get into the fermenter, and then use that same base as a true whiskey and let it age until we think it's ready.
Well, that actually brings a good point because would you want to keep it part of the Big Storm family in terms of tying it back to everything or keeping it on its own? It seems like you want to keep it in.
Yeah, I think we are, I don't even know the marketing term, but it's like you're the brand house of brands or a branded house. I think that, we'll keep it all Big Storm connotation and tie in somehow, right? And so starting with, like I said, Wavemaker whiskey and some other stuff that we have barrels sitting next door. I can't sell it yet because we only have so many barrels. We don't have a lot of them, right? Yeah. Hopefully the new still, I know with this new still, we're going to start laying stuff down faster and faster and faster, right? So.
Gotcha. You're still going strong with the coffee?
Yep.
See, how has that distribution been? Have you even tried to, or is it staying pretty well in-house?
No distribution to speak of. We got the coffee shop open across the street, right? So a little kerfuffle at the end of the build, so we don't have a dedicated home for ice cream yet. That's hopefully going to be fixed and the next few months, but part of that same building, right? We had a kiosk essentially inside that didn't get built. So, the last 6 weeks have been just kind of staffing the coffee shop and learning how to run a coffee shop, let alone just a roastery. And so not the same business at all, right? And, we're getting there. But the first step, I think, again, just like why Fat Point, has to keep a home, a coffee shop, a coffee roastery, either you're a roaster and a brand and there's a lot of effort there, or you can have an actual home where you get feedback and you get to try new things, try exciting things, you get to try different lots and different blends. And, I think we're really committed to that kind of anchoring, right? That anchoring experience to the brand.
So we've got several breweries. We've got distilling. We've got coffee. We've got ice cream. At what point do you pause? Is it fiscally prudent? Is it from a business standpoint? Is it good to take a step back and just kind of let it go for a little while and let it grow? Sure. Or is there something to be said about continuing to look for the next idea, whether it be another location or another avenue in which to grow into?
I think so, as long as the team keeps growing and we can keep supporting the people that work for us. I think it's kind of growth at all costs is going to be our mantra. If the quality stays where it needs to stay, we'll get better, right? We can always get better. But I mean, look, it's a lot, it's a lot, but I don't know. Right now it is floor, pedal to the floor right now. We've got out-of-state distributions growing, great relationships are being made. And so, I see no reason to take our foot off the gas and just kind of maybe rest on our laurels a little bit. I think financially it might be nice, right? To kind of grow and then cultivate and then grow again and cultivate. But I think, we take opportunities as they come. I honestly, a lot of the things that have happened to us in the last 2 to 3 years were not necessarily things we were looking for. They were things that came to us and we were able to make them work. And so to the extent that things keep coming to us, we're going to keep trying to make them work, right? Regardless of how wacky or great or different they may be, we'll look at anything twice. Sometimes that's not fun. I mean, wasting time and getting frustrated, right? But, I think that's kind of that innovation and changing is kind of something we really are comfortable with, right? So until someone else takes over, I think we'll just keep, pedal to the floor, right? So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It looks like you've got a couple flatbreads that are...
You got to get home to my wife.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, bud.
So like I said, there's a lot of great stuff coming up for Big Storm in the future. Hopefully they can get that Ybor location open relatively soon. It's amazing how Ybor has become a little craft beer hotspot in Tampa. But once they open, once everybody else opens, once they are producing more beers, and once I'm able to get more, I will definitely be telling everybody about it. The best place to see that is on social media. Remember, we're at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Twitter. FL Beer Blog is on Facebook. You can find us at floridabeerblog.com, floridabeerpodcast.com, and all of the Florida Podcast Network sites as well. Until next week, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back in the Tampa Bay area again for episode 99, and it's going to be kind of an interesting one. Let's just put it that way. This is Dave, your host and author. Thank you so much for listening, and drink Florida Craft.